Africans of Reddit, what are the greatest misconceptions people have about your native country? 95% of Moroccans, Algerians, Tunisians do not live in the desert we live and have always lived in the extreme north. Plus, most people here have never been to the desert before. It always baffles people when I tell them this. An additional fun fact, at least a third in Morocco and a quarter in Algeria do not speak Arabic as their first language. They speak Berber and identify as such, which is the native language of North Africa, except most of Egypt, with around 20 million speakers worldwide. I moved to Kenya when I was in 4th grade and moved to the US in the 8th grade. People were shocked I knew what a pizza was. I was also asked if I lived in a hut on a tree. It was a very genuine question, and the middle school I went to was one of the top public schools in the Maryland. I like that they assumed the hut had to be in a tree, but then I thought like a middle schooler and I was like, lions. Duh. I heard this story from a Kenyan friend of mine and her American husband. Lots of Christian mission groups want to go visit Kenya to help convert the masses, and one of their go-to tactics is to bring some sort of American food as a gift to help win over their hearts. A very popular gift item is peanut butter. They are surprised to find out that peanut butter is stocked in all the grocery stores, just like it is in the USA. I'm Australian. We had an American exchange student stay with us. She brought us a jar of peanut butter as a gift and was surprised you could get it in Australia. Admittedly, this was in the 90s, so our image overseas was probably from Crocodile Dundee. Kenyan here, that Africans know the local languages and a little English. Most people here are fluent in at least 3 languages: native language, Swahili and English. Anyone below 20 years is likely to have studied French too. It's a recent addition. And no, Africa is not a country. South African here. The first time I traveled to America, LA to be exact, one of the first questions I was asked was if I had ever had pizza before. I mean, South Africa performed the first successful heart transplant. We've had the nuclear bomb, and yes, we have had a chain of Pizza Huts, among other brands, for decades. Speaking of nuclear weaponry, when I explained, South African to BTW, that we developed nuclear weapons to someone, they were shocked and said, I thought South Africa was all desert and poor. There's lots of rainforests in Africa. It even snows. Nigeria. Too many to address at once, so I'll just address one. Boko Haram is a very new thing. Nigeria is divided by tribe and by religion. The majority of the Christians are in the south, and the majority of the Muslims are in the north. There are disagreements, intolerance and clashes from time to time, but for the most part everybody just handles their business. Boko Haram came about in 2002. Prior to that, as someone that spent 20 years in Nigeria growing up, hearing about bombings and terrorist attacks propelled by Islamic extremists was something we watched on the news happening in other countries. When I tell people my family is still in Nigeria, the first thing they ask me is if they are safe and if they have to hide from Boko Haram. Boko Haram has strongholds in the north, especially in Borno State, that is so far from the major hub of Nigeria, Lagos, that it's like asking someone in Florida if they're concerned about what's going on in Montana. People in Nigeria are working, going to school, going to movies, having birthday parties, going to the beach, getting married, turning up on Snapchat, posting on Instagram, getting pedicures, doing normal human things. But the single story picture of Nigeria that makes the US news regularly is Boko Haram. Kind of like the crashed planes thing. If you only ever learned about planes from the news, you would think 100% of planes crash or go missing. It just goes to show how much the news can control how we see the world. I've had people try to correct me, telling me that no, I am not from Ghana, West Africa, but that I'm from Guyana, South America. Oh okay, thanks bud, I always get my homeland mixed up. Guyanese here, we feel your pain. You don't look African. Also, we get our mail sent to you by mistake sometimes, so it ends up 4 months late. Sudan here. We don't hunt for our food. We go to the mall and supermarkets. I know it sounds stupid, but you would be surprised to hear how many people believe that. That Nigerians are all internet scammers. It's not all Nigerians, just your prince. My GF is from Zimbabwe and she has to constantly remind people that she's not African American, she's just African. I live in Nairobi, Kenya, and when I recently went back to Europe to meet up with friends, they all asked me questions like what does it feel like to live without Wi-Fi, or how do you even get to school? These are some of the most stupid questions. People have to understand that it isn't totally different and that a lot of things are the same. PS. They also didn't believe me when I told them there's KFC here. I'm not from South Africa, but I grew up here. People seem to think everyone is African, black. They are surprised to see someone like me, Asian, or when I mention it to other people out of Africa when I socialize. It's so diverse here, there's a bit of everything. Plus, everyone speaks English. There are 11 official languages in South Africa. I can speak 2 English and Afrikaans, and I can understand around 4 English, Afrikaans, Sotho and Zulu. Edit. I can also speak my mother tongue language, which is Thai. It is kind of compulsory to learn local official languages because when you have a job, interacting with people, they want someone who can speak as many of the official languages as possible for the convenience of the customer. Other than that, English is the middle ground. I'm from Kenya. People are surprised I speak fluent English when I tell them it's in fact a language I've spoken all my life besides Swahili. You can see the look of surprise on their faces. To start, 90% of the people I come across never heard of my country before. I'm from Burkina Faso and I live in the US. That makes things already difficult. I therefore actively avoid answering the "where are you from" question, because, when I answer, people are very often baffled. I then have to go through my well-practiced spiel of, don't feel bad, it's a tiny country, and we share a border with Ghana. Heard of Ghana for the conversation to carry on to easier topics. The ones that know about Burkina rarely have misconceptions. They know it's not a rich country, but for them to know about our existence, they usually have to be pretty familiar with Africa to start with. On the other hand, I have legit had to answer all the questions below. Are there zebras running around? Do you still live in huts? How did you travel here? Do you guys have war? Answers are no, no. I took a plane, no. I fall in the category of no's. It's an African country, but I'd need 2 minutes on Wikipedia before I can ask relevant questions. When my sister moved from Zimbabwe to the UK, people thought she was rich or royalty when she spoke about having servants. People in other countries don't realize that a lot of people in the southern parts of Africa have maids and gardeners. When I lived in Tanzania, I had 2 housekeepers. People got so offended, and some straight up accused me of exploiting the locals. My housekeepers had housekeepers and their housekeepers had housekeepers. It's housekeepers all the way down. It would have been really weird for me not to have housekeepers. Egyptian here. So few people realize that the pyramids are quite literally in the middle of the city. Everyone just assumes it's just somewhere in the middle of the desert. Going inside the middle one made me massively claustrophobic as we had to walk bent double all the way to the middle with hundreds of people crushed in doing the same. Great experience, never freaking doing it again. If you mean South Africa, I'd like to point out that Nandus came from there. Cheeky. That we speak bad English. Some of the countries are former colonies of Great Britain, so it's our official language, though now because of the Hollywood invasion we now have an American twist to it. Same goes for French-speaking African nations too. When Australians speak English differently, it's an accent, but when Ugandans speak English differently, it's because they are not educated. From an Egyptian friend, Arabic language is not all the same. There are many different dialects. I came to think of when I introduced an Egyptian friend to a Raj song. Can't remember if it was Taha or Khalid, and he went, "This is not Arabic." Oh, okay, it's Algerian. They're not all black. Someone asked me if I ever saw snow, said no. Then they asked if I ever saw rain. Lord, edit. Since I'm the top comment, my first ever, so thanks guys. I'll tell you what I answered. I was embarrassed for her and I remember just staring at her with a confused look. I bless the rains down in Africa. Algerian here. Yes, you can be from Africa and not be black. That Rwanda is still at war even though the war ended 24 years ago, and Rwanda is now one of the most peaceful and stable countries in Africa. Moroccan here. People from Europe still think that we ride camels and live in the desert. We have fiber optics. 4 grams, Netflix, Imex and camels of course. Camels are cool though. Ethiopian here. There's a couple that we speak Ethiopian. The official language is Amharic, and there are many dialects none of which are called Ethiopian. I assume this is particularly offensive to families who speak other languages, that is, Tigrinya, Oromo, that everyone is starving and unhappy. No, even my family that lived in a mud house, dad's family, was happy and decently fed. You don't need much to be happy. Of course, now that my dad's been in America a couple decades, he complains about internet speeds like the rest of us, that it's in the desert. This one is actually partly true. However, the capital, Addis Ababa, is on the Ethiopian highlands. It's 2,300 meters, 1.4 miles, above sea level and has a quite lovely climate. Highs in the 70s, lows in the 50s and 40s. Never goes above 90, though I've heard it can reach freezing. The highlands cover about 70%ish of Ethiopia. There are 3 different climates in Ethiopia, one of which has, depending on the year, the hottest place on earth. Oh, and also we're the birthplace of coffee. More fun facts. We also tell time differently. When the sun rises it's approximately 1 AM, and when it sets it's 1 PM. Since there are approximately 12 hours of sunshine daily throughout the year, we can use this system, though it's confusing for international business. We also have 13 months comprising of 12 months of 30 days and 1 month of either 5 or 6 days. It's also currently 2010, and the new year starts on either the 11th of September or 12th on our calendar. My brain just popped. I'm from Nigeria. People assume it's a shithole. It's a very pretty nation, but don't ever freaking go there. There is a good chance you will die. It's a shithole. I kid, but I feel like I'm left defending the country to people who hate it, and telling people that they have no idea what they're getting into if they want to go there. If you have ever lived in Nigeria, you know it's a great and beautiful country, but if you're in the US you know your goal is to bring the family here, not moving back again. Also, women suck snot out of babies' noses. I didn't realize Americans didn't do that to clear sinuses. They give you fancy suction bulbs at the hospital when they send you home with baby. South African here. Biggest misconception is that we are all black or white. It even gets portrayed that way in South African media and political talks. In general, African Asian and Indian Asian always get forgotten. My pet peeve is when people learn you are from Africa and know an African language. They smash a bunch of syllables and clicks together and ask you what it means. I constantly have to refrain from backhanding people. You should backhand them and say my mother was an honorable woman, then never speak to them again. I'm from Uganda, and we are not looking for a queen. We abolished monarchy back in '62. We don't know the way, but we are hopeful about the future. In grade 10 I told my friend they had skyscrapers in Africa, and she was mildly shocked. People seem to think black Zimbabweans willingly voted to suffer the way we did. There was a lot of intimidation and fear that kept ZANU-PF and Mugabe in power. Rigging is so common in our elections that it's rumored that the last election that Mugabe won was in 1990. It wasn't just white Zimbabweans who suffered under the Mugabe regime. It was everyone who wasn't part of or a beneficiary of the political elite. I went to Accra, Ghana a few years ago and stayed in what could only be described as a classic suburb. Large, sort of bland modern houses. Instead of hot blonde moms piling kids into minivans, it was hot Ghanaian moms piling kids into Kias. Also, there are a ton of Kias in Accra. I had no idea that the music from Africa is as cool as it is. I came across Modern Ethiopics just yesterday and haven't stopped listening yet. It is from the mid 60s to early 70s, but holy crap, it is some of the best music I've listened to in a long time. Color me impressed. Look up Fela Kuti. The average conversation goes something like this. Person: so where are you from? England or Australia? Me: actually I'm from South Africa. P: South Africa, but why aren't you black? First question, every time. Me: the same reason you're not Native American. P: do you have cars there? Do you know what electricity is? Have you ridden a zebra? How do you catch your food? Do you know what Facebook is? How do you get clothes there? List goes on for a while. Eventually I get tired of answering these questions and just end up playing along, seeing how far I can go and still be taken seriously. Here's an example of another conversation I've had. Person 2. So why aren't you black? Me. Well, there's a problem with our ozone layer which affects people's skin. My grandparents were black. My parents were a light brown and now I'm white. P2. Oh yeah, I heard about that. So do you have computers there? Do they run on electricity? Me. Yeah, we've got a generator in the garden with a giant hamster wheel attached to it, where Freddy, my pet lion, runs on to power our cave. P2. Well, that's fascinating. Doesn't he ever try to eat you? Me. Yeah, sometimes, if I don't feed him enough. But I just beat him with a stick and he'll leave me alone. P2. You speak very good English. How did you learn? Me. I bought a book last week. Just started learning but it's quite hard. I'm hoping one day I'll be able to read a newspaper. That's been my lifelong dream. That we love our home. That we would stay here even if we had the option to move. That everyone lives in mud huts and sings songs all the time. That elephants and tigers roam the streets. Not getting that tigers are from Asia. That people roam around wearing nothing but beads. That African is one language. Slightly unrelated, but a girl I met at university thought the language spoken in The Lion King was fake. I quote, like gibberish and Yiddish. The irony of Yiddish being an actual language makes this sentence murderously funny. You've been visited by the toothpaste man. For good teeth and fresh breath, comment oh fresh. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.